What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So just when we thought we might see the end of the Stylus smartphone, suddenly there's been almost a sort of revival, led in part by TCL and their new TCL Stylus 5G. Now, this device is not meant to compete with a Samsung Note or an S Ultra. Instead, it fills the missing void left by the LG Stylo and is a direct competitor to Motorola's Moto G Stylus. And compete it certainly does. In my opinion, this TCL Stylus 5G is not just a solid first-time effort from TCL, but a better overall value than Moto's offerings with its price point, and it delivers a couple of Stylus-specific apps and features that indicate to me TCL's interest in giving its customers a little more. TCL sells plenty of other non-Stylus devices at a whole bunch of different price points, and that are arguably better than this one, but this phone is made specifically for folks who want an integrated Stylus experience in whatever way they might use it, and I think Stylus superfans will be more than happy with what's offered here. At the same time, this device is a sub $300 carrier-exclusive prepaid device. It's limited both in its specs and by its availability. You'll have to be either a T-Mobile or Metro customer to buy one, or be willing to switch. But if you fall in that category, and you have some realistic expectations for a device at this price point, I think you'll be more than happy with TCL's new Stylus 5G. So in this video, I'm going to fill you in on everything you need to know about this phone. We'll go over the Stylus experience, of course, the performance, the camera, and everything in between. And hopefully this helps you decide if the Stylus 5G is the phone for you. Physically, the TCL Stylus is one of those tall, elongated devices. It has a 6.81-inch screen corner to corner and a decent screen-to-body ratio of some 85%, with a hole-punch selfie camera up top, minimal size side bezels, and slightly larger but not overly offensive bottom chin. It's a pretty good-looking phone from the front, I have no complaints, and in the hand, while it is certainly a bit of a stretch, I think if you're coming from any other Stylus phone, the LG Stylo, the Moto G Stylus, this is the same lengthy form factor you're used to. While you'll have to do some shifting and maneuvering to reach the top edges sometimes, having all this screen real estate on a stylus-centered smartphone is a must-have. Around back, TCL went with a very simple design and build, to say the least. There's no flashy colors, no funky finishes. This is a plain lunar black, all-plastic smartphone with a matte feel, and it's super flat too. The sides and edges finish off that ice cream sandwich-shaped design. The metal-like frame gives the phone a bit of weight, but from start to finish, this is as plain and simple of a smartphone as I've seen this year. Durability-wise, I haven't noticed any scratches or wear marks in the weeks that I've been using this phone without a case, but keep in mind there's no IP or splash rating here, so getting it wet is not a good idea. Unlike some other phones, TCL does give you all the basic physical features and functionalities here, including an SD card slot for expandable storage, a headphone jack at the bottom, alongside dual stereo speakers, one down below there and the secondary one in the earpiece, and a side-mounted power button fingerprint setup too that's fast, accurate, and an overall pleasure to use. It's one of those that just barely requires the lightest of touches to activate, and I've had zero issues with it. I honestly forget that it's there that it works so well. Of course, there's also that built-in stylus at the bottom of the phone as well, sort of the whole reason for its existence, so let's now talk about that. The stylus itself is very easy to pop in and out of the phone. It has a clickable top that presents itself with just enough to be able to pull it out, and this setup is very similar to Samsung's Stylus and what Motorola also offers nowadays. In addition, when you slide it back in, there's also a bit of a magnetic pull that ensures it makes it into its designated spot, and I like this. If you accidentally click it, the stylus won't fall out, and when you slide it back in, it helps keep it in place as well. The stylus itself is also built well. It's one of those flat profile pens, kind of hard to describe, but not round, obviously. Rectangularly shaped, which I actually like. I think it makes it fairly comfortable. The non-removable pen tip is thin enough to be precise, but duller than some other ones I've seen. And while you can play around with the clicky top all you want, there's no actual buttons or functionality with the stylus, like you might have with Samsung's Note or the Ultra. The stylus isn't connected to the phone in any way. There's no Bluetooth or anything like that. I like to say that it's nothing more than a nicely designed toothpick, and that's expected for this more budget-focused stylus device. It's the same with Motorola, and also what we saw on the LG Stylo. The stylus stuff really boils down to the apps and features TCL added to this phone. So when you withdraw the stylus, you're automatically presented with a list of apps and tools that make good use of the stylus itself. But first off, if you want to just use the stylus as you would your finger here to tap, touch, swipe, and scroll your way through the phone, you totally can. I know a lot of folks just use the stylus in this way as a more precise touch instrument, but the real value here is all these apps and tools. So a lot of these things we've seen before on other Android stylus smartphones. There's of course the standard Notes app for writing, there's a screenshot shortcut for taking and editing screenshots quickly, there's a screen recording shortcut as well for precise screen recording, a magnifying tool which can help you see all the little things on screen, GIF makers, split screen shortcut, all these apps and tools we've had before, but there's two apps in particular that TCL brought to this phone specifically that are sort of exclusive: Nebo and MyScript Calculator. These are paid apps that TCL offers for free on the stylus, and they are really advanced, honestly, and great for school, work, or anything else. Nebo is a more robust note taker and document editor. You can quickly convert written text to typed text, you can edit PDFs, create freeform written documents, and a whole lot more. MyScript Calculator is also an advanced paid-for app that's offered for free, and it's a math solver that also can convert handwritten questions and solve them instantly. Now, I'm no longer a student, but if I had these two apps in particular, I really think they would have been beneficial, and I applaud TCL for bringing them to this phone. They go beyond the usual Android stylus apps we've seen year after year, and it's encouraging to see TCL try and offer something different. Of course, you can also just install and use whatever other stylus apps you might like from the Google Play Store or anywhere else, and you can have them be on the shortcuts panel too. It's completely customizable, and you can throw on some non-stylus app shortcuts too if you want. When it comes to the actual writing experience, if you're familiar with any other budget-friendly stylus smartphone, you'll know what to expect. This is a fairly simple, rudimentary setup, so you'll notice a bit of lag or gap between the pen tip and a line on screen, and this is a result of the stylus not being connected to the phone in any way, and the phone itself not really being made for the stylus. That latency is not unexpected, and it's not a negative at this price point. I just wish there was some way to make it even a little better. Still, between the pen itself being fairly comfortable and the tip being precise enough, you can write, draw, and scribble fairly accurately once you get used to it. Overall, the TCL stylus offers a decent but still budget stylus experience that's hardware-wise on par with Motorola or the former LG Stylo, but it's not going to compete with Samsung's Note. TCL did deliver a slightly elevated app and software experience with those couple of nice paid-for add-ons that seems to indicate their desire in offering slightly more than the competition. And I'm interested to see what they'll continue to offer with potential updates or future iterations of this phone. I'm hoping they stick with it because there is still plenty of interest in a stylus-specific smartphone. So let's now talk about everything else. And with the remaining specs and things, this is where you kind of have to remember the price point of this device. Starting with the display, the large 6.81-inch screen is an IPS LCD panel, coming in at a resolution of 2460 by 1080 and packing in around 395 pixels per inch. On the one hand, this size with 1080 resolution is great. The screen is plenty sharp, and you obviously have a lot of real estate to work with. But with it being an LCD panel, things don't get as bright as I would like, especially with outdoor viewing. You'll be battling a bit of glare. And while things on screen generally look good, you don't get the bold, punchy, colorful look like you would with OLED. TCL does offer their Next Vision tweaks on this phone to artificially enhance the color and look of the display, and the vivid setup does make a bit of a difference. But compared to the likes of the OnePlus Nord N20 or some of Samsung's A-series phones, the screen falls a bit short. Furthermore, there's no high refresh rate here either, just a 60Hz panel. I know I said that you should keep your expectations realistic given its price point, but there are plenty of phones in the $300 range that can at least offer 90Hz and an OLED panel. So the display for me is fine, but there are better options out there if that's your main concern. Powering this phone is the MediaTek Dimensity 700 chipset, paired with 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. Now, while I do think the MediaTek processor itself is a great choice, it's newer, relatively powerful, 4 gigs of RAM here is a bit of a miss. I think just given how this phone seems to be positioned as a doer, as a phone made for work, for school, for notes, for more complicated apps, the 4 gigs of RAM seems limited. And I'm often seeing in the app switch panel and through the device care menu that I don't have a lot of RAM left to utilize after 10 or so apps are opened. Yes, it's very easy to clear those apps, optimize the phone, and get back to work, but I almost feel like I shouldn't have to do that. And I don't think nowadays that adding 6 gigs of RAM would have been a huge cost bump. It would have made this phone a better multitasker and probably is the difference maker performance-wise. Now, I should note that I didn't have any explicit performance issues. From app to app, the phone performs just fine, whether I'm scrolling through social media or doing a bit of gaming, and that I believe has more so to do with the MediaTek processor than anything else. So long as your focus is on a couple apps at a time, this phone is perfectly fine. It's just when you start to have dozens or more apps loaded up and running and you try to jump back and forth between them, do you realize that app management and RAM kind of holds this device back. Also, while it's great this phone launched with Android 12, I don't believe I've gotten a single security patch or any other updates since launch. Kind of weird, and I hope TCL stays on top of their software updates. The TCL skin also takes some getting used to. It's a little quirky sometimes. It's not my favorite Android skin, but there's nothing inherently wrong, just my personal preference. Like I said though, in the budget space, you should expect some performance compromises. And while this phone does perform great for the most part, the biggest compromise I see is less RAM than I'd like. One other thing that sort of surprised me about this phone was TCL's choice to throw in a 4,000 milliamp battery. Usually phones this big should have a 4,500 or 5,000 milliamp battery, so this is small-ish by comparison. And I think the small size is indicative of less than ideal battery life. Is this still a full day phone? Yes, for most people it will be. But you can see that after a few hours of filming with this phone, gaming included, I'm well below 50%. This for me has been a device that yields 8 to 9 hours of screen on time, though I think I might use the phone more than some people would. Again, it's not an overall net negative, just a bit of a compromise, specifically with the battery size, that I think TCL could have done differently. On the plus side, TCL didn't cheap out and actually included not just any old cable and charger, but an 18-watt plug at that. So thank you, TCL, for giving people the required accessories for this new device. Finally, when it comes to the cameras, TCL threw on a pretty decent array of lenses to pick from, including a solid 50 megapixel main shooter, a very useful 5 megapixel ultra-wide, and 2 megapixel macro and depth sensors for up-close pics and portrait shots. There's a 13 megapixel selfie camera up front as well, which is solid, and inside the camera app, there's probably 85 to 90% of what I would consider to be a well-rounded feature set for a budget device. Some stuff, like HDR, AI enhancements, and video stabilization, are worthwhile add-ons. There's pro controls in high megapixel mode, slow-mo, light trace, which is sort of a long exposure mode that unfortunately doesn't work too well, but there's no actual dedicated night mode for standard pictures as far as I can tell, which is weird. Probably the biggest thing that's missing. And with some real-world shots here, it is those nighttime and low-light shots that I found to be the biggest struggle. Like I often say, you'll be able to tell these pictures and videos were captured by a budget device. Very bright scenes get overexposed, dark and dim settings are a bit fuzzy, shadows are lost, lights have glare or halo effects, but when conditions are right, TCL delivers a bold and colorful, very pleasing looking default image profile that I think most people would be happy about. And detail-wise, especially in that high megapixel mode, the phone really does capture a lot. I don't know that TCL has been a leader in camera tech. I think Motorola and Samsung offer a bit more with their camera setups in that $300 range nowadays, but what you do get here is still pretty good. And so long as you know what to expect, a budget device with a kind of budget camera setup, I think you'll be a-okay with what you have to work with. So all in all, the TCL Stylus 5G definitely has its perks. Probably the biggest one is price. For $280-ish all in, it's significantly cheaper than the Moto G Stylus 5G, which is anywhere between $350 and $500 depending on the day. You get a couple paid-for advanced Stylus apps, whereas Motorola hasn't offered anything new on its phone in years. It ships with Android 12, the MediaTek processor is perfectly capable, the big screen is a big plus. The compromises here are the fact that it's not OLED, it's not 90 Hz, and 4 gigs of RAM is probably 2 gigs too few. But I think previous Moto G Stylus owners should seriously consider this device if you happen to be or want to be T-Mobile customers. And to TCL explicitly, I'll say that this is a great first effort for a Stylus device. If you can just improve this by like half a step next year, even if you have to raise the price $50 to do it, you're gonna probably convert the rest of Motorola's users, older Stylus 6 loyalists, and anyone else in the budget smartphone space too, for that matter. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on TCL's new Stylus 5G. What do you guys think? Does a Stylus smartphone have a place in 2022? Do you have one already? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experience. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.